What's going on, Falcons fans? Welcome back to Pound for Pound ATL. I'm your man, Jonathan Holder,
I'm J.R. Clark.
and we're here to talk about what's been going on with your Atlanta Falcons this week. First of all, though, how you doing, man? How you doing, Jr.?
Oh man, I'm doing all right. It's been a pretty good day. Had to been dealing with a foot issue and decided to go to Good Feet. I don't know if y'all have ever been to a Good Feet store. I'm gonna go ahead and save you the time and trouble. Not that they're a bad place, but make sure you have a second mortgage, because talk about wanting a whole bunch of money for some insoles. So that was some
Oh
sticker
yeah,
shock. That was sticker shock that I was not expecting. So
yeah. I got arthritis, so for some years back, it's before I met my wife. But some years back, I looked into custom shoes, really get in there, measure like every curve of your foot and all this stuff to give you like the perfect shoe. It was like 400, 500, $600 for stuff. I was like, what is, well,
like
man?
these not to derail this too much, but it was upwards of $1,600 for some inserts for my shoes.
Whoa.
I was like,
Just the
I
inserts?
yeah, just inserts and cushions. Now this is like a lifetime, what have you, but still, I was just like, I was floored, and I had to politely decline and walk away because I told the guys like, man, if I known it was gonna be like this, I would not even wasted y'all's time. um, but enough about wasting time and talking about good feet. So yeah, we are wrapping up voluntary OTAs. Um, but
Yep.
before we get into that necessarily, we had a few roster moves, almost like a catch and release type situation going on there,
Yep.
which I, I,
Got
I
one. I
thought was
had to get
fitting.
rid of another.
Yeah, it's like right now, a lot of times if you see the team signing somebody, there tends to be a corresponding move
Yeah.
because you're at capacity as far as your roster is concerned. With 90 guys. So generally speaking, if you see somebody get brought in, um, you are going to see somebody else getting released. This happened a little while back when a couple days ago they released Jamal Peters and then brought in um, Breon Borders. Now, we got the news today that Breon Borders was suspended the first two games of the season.
Yeah.
Uh,
Don't know why.
so,
Nobody knows why. At least they
yeah,
haven't
I
come out
haven't
with
seen why yet, but uh, I wonder if it is, they were talking about it could be anything, right? He could be, uh, he had some performance enhancers or, they ain't no telling what it was, but he's already suspended for the first two games. So it'd be interesting to see if he even makes it to camp. Uh,
Yeah.
I
Especially
wonder.
with especially with as crowded as the secondary room already is.
Hmm. So that was an interesting thing that popped out today. But before then, we signed defensive tackle Carlos Davis.
Yep.
Now, former seventh round pick in the 2020 draft has played a grand total of 12 games. So this is truly a depth signing.
Yep.
Spent the past 2 years with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but he's 6'2", 320 pounds. Um, since nobody has seen Eddie Goldman yet that we know of, part of me wonders uh, if he's there just kind of taking reps until Goldman is ready to go, or is he
Possible.
pushing for that spot?
Yeah. And well, I don't think he's. I mean, obviously they bring him in if he just blows their minds. Then more power to him. I don't think that's what it is. I think because if we look at it, 2020 he played in like 7 games. 2021 he played in 4 games. I don't know about any injuries that may or may not have happened, but he only played in like 4 games. 2022 he only played in 1 game.
Right.
You
So
know, so
we're
yeah,
going downhill here,
yeah,
not uphill.
the time is going down. So uh, this is likely a camp body,
That's kind of what I'm
uh,
thinking too.
a guy that can maybe make it on the very back end of a rotation. Uh, Maybe even a guy that if they see enough of him in camp, and maybe they see something just like a little glint somewhere, then maybe he ends up on the practice squad.
Right,
So,
he gets stashed on the practice squad.
yep.
But as we talked about a second ago, corresponding move, they released Jalen Dalton. It became official. I think there were rumors a couple of days ago that they were going to, or that they did, or were going to release him, but it became official shortly after they signed uh, Carlos Davis. So
Yep.
that's kind of the corresponding move there. And Dalton was, you know, 6'5", 288. So you might have been looking for a guy with a little bit more beef. Um, now Dalton did play 7 games for us last year. Uh, so now, granted, that's because our defensive line was decimated by injury. Um, but that was a guy who I thought, did show some stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
he had 8 tackles, 1 tackle for loss. But with what you've brought in with Calais Campbell and another guy we're going to talk about here in a minute, and Eddie Goldman coming back off retirement, they might have just wanted to take a look at a beefier run stuffer, which is what sounds like Carlos Davis is.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
like I said, he definitely seems like a depth signing at the best.
right, that's kind of what I'm figuring as well. So, as I alluded to earlier, we are in the final week of voluntary OTAs,
Yep.
which is a big deal. The word voluntary is a big deal. So, if you were down at the bins on Friday and you didn't see certain players, or with the uh, videos and clips that are coming out, the articles that are being written, if certain guys aren't being mentioned at all, it could be the fact that they're just not there. It is a voluntary session, so it's not something that they have to be at. So guys like Cordell Patterson get slow rolled during this part of the season because they want them to be fresher for the season. But we had the first big blow
Mhm.
to the roster. This happened on Friday while we were down at the bins, and we had kind of commented on hope it was nothing serious. Well, it turned out to be pretty serious, and that was Avery Williams tore his ACL in a non-contact injury down at the bins on Friday, and so now that, which really sucks because he was one of the better and more consistent returners
I think
in the league.
he led the league in like return average. I think last
Right, he
year
had
it
like
was like
16 yards.
16
Yeah,
something.
and that's the thing is like in the return game, I've always heard it said, go get me a first down, meaning like at least go get me 10 yards, at least advance the ball, 10 yards. And Avery Williams on average was advancing it, 16 yards or 16 plus yards. He's getting you, almost 2 first downs with his returns, which is, what you want. Arguably the Falcons special teams was one of the better units last couple of years,
Mhm.
really.
Yep.
So and Avery Williams was part of that, and this is a big blow to that return game, but it does open up like an avenue for somebody else to stick on the roster.
Yep. And
Um,
like the coach brought it up in his press conference and specifically called out some names like Mike Hughes, D. Alford, Penny Hart, Josh Ali. Uh, Especially for guys, I'm going to say this, especially for guys like Penny Hart and Josh Ali. Those are guys that like this could be a very, very important situation for them because that may be the only way they get on the roster is
exactly.
being the return guy.
Right.
Mike Hughes and D. Alford are probably pretty close to being locks. Uh, Again, barring any further injuries and things like that. Penny Hart, Josh Ali, that's not the case. So,
Right. Exactly. And that's like special teams is the gateway for these lower tier guys to
mhm.
to make this roster. Guys, like I mean, D. Alford, that's where he made his bones at to begin with. With the Falcons, and then was able to work his way onto the field itself. Through his practice and everything else, but it was due to special teams that landed him a spot. And I think of a guy like D. Alford, if he can, like during the preseason or whatever, uh, if he can separate himself even as a returner, that could give him yet another feather in his cap. Make it even harder for you not to, you know, put him on the 53 and not to not carry him on game day. Because if he
Mm-hmm.
can give you like, he's one of the guys that Ryan Nielsen has already called out like unprompted. I'm
Yeah.
always interested when a coach is unprompted naming guys, and D offers the name that has come up from Coach Nielsen, and so if he can add like punt returner to his resume, I think that could be extremely huge for a guy like D Alford.
Absolutely. D. Alford, like you said, any of those guys, this is, this is where a lot of guys, like their whole career is the only reason why they stayed in the NFL as long as they do is because of special
I
teams.
mean, Cordell Patterson,
Yeah.
like he was like, and you imagine there was a thought process of that. I thought to myself, hey, I wonder if Avery Williams is going to get more touches on like kickoff returns, trying to save Cordell Patterson's legs, but it might actually go the other way around now with Avery Williams going down. You might actually see Cordell getting more, play on the kickoffs than what they necessarily intended, because of his experience and his juice. Um, and also the fact that you have two young bucks as far as the running backs are concerned, you might be more willing to put Cordell back there on those kickoffs
Yeah,
and kick
he
returns
did
like
it.
that.
He did it occasionally last year. Like it was rare, but he did it every now and then.
Yeah, when they felt like
Um,
they needed a spark or something, they would
yeah,
put him back there.
but
Uh,
yeah, it sucks. I remember we were sitting there on Friday at the bins, and I didn't necessarily see like exactly what happened to him. Found out later it's a non-contact thing,
mhm.
and that was the scary part. Like anytime you see a guy just go down,
That's no
and he
good. Yeah,
didn't get nailed by somebody or tripped up or anything, it just goes down. You immediately and he has to come off the field. Your first thought is like, oh, ACL, MCL, something,
yep.
Achilles, something like that. But I remember seeing him walk off the field with what I assumed was a trainer, and I was like, oh, that's not good. Um, and then yeah, it's just I feel bad for him because, like you said, he had made the transition, was getting better, and especially in the punt return game, he was really really good last year. Was probably good, hoping to have an even better season this year. Uh, so it's just
It's tough to
it's
see.
I hate it for the young kid, and hopefully he comes back better and better next year, and yeah, we'll see how it
That's
goes.
the hope because I mean he brought like especially last year. He brought you a speed element, to your backfield that you didn't necessarily have. He allowed you to do things like jet motions um, you know, and he was getting better at the um, like screen game and stuff like that. He
Yeah,
gave you that almost gadget play type ability, and that's going to be I mean, that's going to be missed this year. I know
yeah,
you got Bijan, who is a do-it-all back, but the speed element that Avery Williams had and his shiftiness is definitely going to be missed.
yeah,
But on the good news side of injury fronts, Taquan Graham was back at practice yesterday.
yeah.
We had a picture snapped of him from D. Orlando Ledbetter showing him standing there with his helmet on. Didn't sound like he was doing a ton, but to my knowledge, this is the first time him being back on the practice field since he hurt his knee last year.
Yeah,
So
it'll take him a little while to kind of get back in, get back in the flow of things, and they want to make sure he's good to go before like really letting him loose. So, uh, but I didn't even like. I missed it somehow. Might be because I have you saw it from D. Orlando Ledbetter. I think I have him blocked and or muted. Uh,
Right.
so
No,
yeah. So I didn't know about it. He was, and so we just before we started recording this, you were like, yeah, TQ's back at practice. I was like, wait, what? What?
right.
What?
And
What? You know?
he's a guy that I think that um, in certain packages, I think he's going to be counted on quite a bit. I think there's a thought process in my mind that he could be like one of the primary backups to uh, Calais Campbell, or if you're going for a kind of like a more pass rush D line, like because
Yeah.
he definitely gives you some juice there. So and he's a guy I hope to see take a nice step forward again because he was looking good last year before he
Yeah.
went down.
The problem, and I hope he does, but the problem is that if he had finished out the year, then I think I would be even more hyped for him coming into this year. The fact that he's coming off an injury, uh,
Might settle some of that hype
I
down a little bit.
yeah, like not that I think he's going to be bad. I just think it might take him a while to kind of really get going again, to get back to where he was last year. And then now he could surprise me and come in day one and be even like way better than he was last year.
Right,
My expectations though are uh, probably initially to have a lower percentage in the rotation of snaps. I don't necessarily expect him to be like a major part until probably later in the season.
right.
That's my expectations. If he beats that, then great. But
Awesome, right?
my expectation is just for him to be a rotation piece to give other guys, rest until the end of until like middle on the back end of the season.
Hmm.
Be my guess.
So early reports about like a quote unquote Cinderella story, or maybe like this year's Jared Bernhardt reported on by Tori McElhaney. It sounds like Slade Bolden is doing pretty well, or like
Yep.
showing up in making plays early on in this like 7-on-7, 11-on-11 periods. So that's interesting to see. I made a joke when he first came out of college that I wouldn't mind like if Slade Bolden ended up on a roster because he gave you that like shifty slot receiver type vibes.
Yeah.
And at the time, we didn't necessarily have that guy. Now it seems like we may have, two of those guys. One of them being Scotty Miller, who might be a better, faster version of Slade Bolden. But it's good to hear that um, he's he's already kind of making some waves there.
Yeah. He had a couple of really good plays, kind of back to back or very close together. So definitely turned some heads, which is good for him. Again, like once you get past the top three guys,
Hmm.
it's kind of wide open.
And yeah, it kind of gets a little
Um,
iffy after after Hollins and Miller.
yep.
You know,
Yeah,
obviously
you
Drake's
got
the number one. You know,
London, Hollins, Miller. Those are your mainstays right now. Those are your locks.
right?
Uh, Once you get past that, I mean, Kadero Hodge, special teams guy, he's probably making the team. Uh, who's even past him? I mean,
Like
I'm
right
trying
now,
to
you're
like
like, that's the
I'm
one
blanking.
area that if we have some undrafted free agent make it, it's going to be in the wide receiver room because you have the Xavier Malone and Justin Marshall,
Yep, yep,
um, Arcega Whiteside,
yep.
um,
Forgot about him.
like,
We
but
just signed him too. So
yeah, but it didn't help, like in the sense of the drops and stuff that he had. But you're right, like past Scotty Miller, like it starts getting real murky real quick. Yes, I know
yeah,
we have somebody had commented on Twitter, oh well, we got 12 wide receivers on the roster. I thought he was just throwing a number out there because it damn sure didn't seem like we had 12 wide receivers until I went to the roster and counted. And sure enough, there are actually 12 wide receivers on this roster. And I
wow.
was like shocked by it because like just now. Like once you get past Cordell Hodge, you're like, okay, who is it? It's wide receiver 152. It seems like all the extras,
Yep.
of a football movie. Um, so I'll be interested to see if Miller can, not Miller, but if Bolden can carve himself out a role and keep like ascending. He doesn't seem like he has a ton in front of him that's going to stand in his way. So can he
I,
capitalize on that opportunity?
yeah, I wonder if they would like to keep him on again, assuming that he continues to show out in practice.
Right.
Keep him on to kind of have the football version of like something you hear about quite a bit in basketball, which is sometimes in basketball, like depending on what the other team's doing, you may go with a lot of big guys. So you
Yeah,
got
yeah.
your big rotation out there. And other times they go small, so they have like their center is like 6'10" or 6'11", maybe even as short as 6'9", but generally 6'10" is about as low as you want to go on that. But then you have like smaller, guards, smaller forwards.
Play
To
that
you
small
kind of
ball.
play you go small on them, and then you basically are outrunning them and things like that. So depending on the team, some teams may have bigger cornerbacks that match up much better against the Drake Londons and the Mac Hollins of the world. But you give them guys like a Scotty Miller, a Slade Bolden, Xavier Malone, those smaller, shiftier, quicker guys. Uh, then they may end up with a situation where they kind of go small ball on them, and it really messes with them up. So, who knows?
Yeah. Um, so one of the interesting things is something we have talked about a handful of times since this has started is like, what is the role for a guy like D'Angelo Malone? And we got a little bit of clarification from Tori McElhaney's article talking about his usage. It says his potential usage in Nielsen's schemes, talking about D'Angelo Malone, became a bit clearer on Wednesday, with Malone being utilized in certain packages as the jack. It didn't happen all the time, but it was happening enough to take notice. So, for all those who aren't necessarily familiar with what a jack linebacker is, um, see if I can get you a good. Let's see, Sam will. Okay, jack linebackers in a 3-4 defense. The will linebacker might slide over next to the Mike to add a fourth linebacker on the outside of the weak side, known as the jack. Here's where it's like, okay, what does that even mean, right? That's just a
Yeah,
bunch of mumbo jumbo. The jack linebacker is usually a pass rusher or a run stopper, but generally is a pass rusher. So they need to be, larger players similar to defensive ends in size. So that, like, why is that a big deal? Okay, the big deal on that is like it kind of gives you an idea of how these players are getting viewed. So if Malone is getting viewed as a jack, traditionally jack linebackers tend to be more like, what we would have called like a Leo linebacker or a pass rushing linebacker.
yeah,
Uh, I've kind of lumped them all together and call them like rush backers. So it's interesting that it's getting called out because we felt like that Nielsen generally, at least out in New Orleans, the mold that they liked were bigger edge guys. So what do you do with guys like Malone or guys like mainly Malone really, because Ebiketie was already like showing that he could be bigger.
yeah,
So, fitting that mold more. Now, granted, we have noted thus far that Malone has looked bigger, but
yeah.
he's still not like your traditionally, big edge. I actually kind of wonder what the website has him listed as. But anyway, so the question was going to be like, okay, what is this? How does this team view him, or how does this new defensive staff view him in light of drafting a guy like Zach Harris, who's 6'6", 272? You know, how do
Mm.
they view Malone? And so hearing that he's getting work as a Jack linebacker, which is, generally more of like a pass rushing linebacker, was kind of encouraging, really, to me anyway. Because on the website, he's listed at 6'4", 240, which would make him the, lightest outside linebacker that we
Yeah.
currently have.
Yeah,
So
240 is pretty light. That's lighter than Vic Beasley was,
right,
at
because
least coming out.
Bud Dupree, outside linebacker, is listed at 269.
Yeah, he's
So
a heftier dude.
right, and so with that being said, it's just interesting to see, where these guys are getting lined up, how are they going to get used, how are they being, viewed by the coaching staff in relation to what their role is going to be and like how they're going to get deployed. So that was an interesting note that I caught from her article there.
Yeah, I would probably put Malone if I had to take a guess. Malone's probably because he doesn't look bigger than last year where he coming out of college he was 240. He's probably in the 245, maybe as much as 250 range.
Hmm.
And Ebiketie, I'm probably guessing is probably the 255,
He's probably pushing
260
close, yeah,
range.
closer to 260, I would think, at this junction. It had him listed at 252, I think is what it said on the site. I just closed it down, so I couldn't tell you, but I think that's what they had him listed as, either 252 or 256. But he's probably getting closer to that 260, 265 range, which sounds like more where Nielsen wants his guys to be at anyway. Uh, but I'm glad to see that they didn't necessarily just cast D'Angelo to the wind, because his speed to power conversion coming out of college was something that really caught my eye, especially with he's got such long arms and he seemed to really know how to use them well in Western Kentucky. And he was giving people fits down at the Senior Bowl last year.
Yeah,
He gave uh, the Saints first round draft pick Trevor Penning like all he could freaking handle down at the Senior Bowl, to a point where Penning had to resort back to being basically a jerk. And because that's like Penning's like calling card in a sense, like
yeah,
playing like beyond the edge of the whistle kind of deal. And handful of times he was giving Malone like cheap shots because Malone was just working him.
yeah.
And so he's a guy who, at bare minimum, I think could really carve out a role as a, as that OCU Manura role back in the day, that DPR, that designated pass rush.
Yep, yep. And that's probably outside of seeing Grady running with Graham again, running with Calais, running with Goldman, Onyemata, running with those guys. Probably my next like most anticipated thing that I'm looking forward to this year is seeing the edge guys, the Bud Duprees, uh, the Ebiketis and the Malones, like work with talent on the interior that can hopefully allow them to take advantage of guys not being able to step up in the pocket properly,
Right.
and trying to seeing those sack numbers go up for those guys. I would love to see both Malone and Ebiketie both like you know give me at least somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10 sacks. If I can get that out of both of those guys,
Oh, dude, that would be night and day difference.
yeah.
Night and day difference. Well, I think that pretty much does it for us on wrapping up the voluntary OTAs, Jonathan. Unless you got anything else that you were wanting to add to the mix.
Um, No, I like I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing from Jeff Okuda,
Yeah,
or what I'm not seeing.
like
What
hearing what's being reported. It really
yeah, I
sounds
mean,
like he's taking advantage of his opportunity.
yeah, I wasn't super focused on the DB stuff in when we were out there at the Benz on Friday. I was more looking at like offensive line, defensive line a little bit, but then also the quarterbacks, the receivers, those guys. So I wasn't super focused in on the DBs, but I'm hearing that London and Okuda they're going at it in camp, and each of them gets their own wins, which is what you want to see.
Oh yeah,
You don't want to see one side just completely dominating the other. You want to see some guys get their wins, um, and so. But I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing about Okuda. So I hope that continues, and I hope he can solidify himself as cornerback two. Uh, I mean, if he's good enough, maybe he could be quarterback 1A, or 1B to AJ's 1A. Whatever, however you want to look at it, but that's an encouraging sound, and it does sound like D. Alford is a guy that is doing a lot with uh, he's running a lot of nickel
yeah.
corner with the ones, so that's
Yeah, I don't
encouraging to
think.
see.
Yeah, I don't think Alford is going to give up. Like he's not going to back down from that. The
No,
opportunity to be that nickel guy, to be that starting nickel guy. Um, it really does sound like the coaching staff is wanting Okuda to like take that other starting cornerback role and really lock it down and make it his own. Um, you know, on the, as far as like the offensive line goes, Bergeron is still like working with the twos, but that's to be expected. I think after seeing what happened with Jalen Mayfield getting thrown to the wolves, they're not going to rush him out there, especially considering that Hennessy has done okay so far. You know what I'm saying? As
yep.
far as his reps and stuff like that. The
We
one
m-
thing
we
I am,
might we might even see I we'll see how it pans out. It would not surprise me to see Hennessy start the season as your left guard, and Bergeron, as he becomes more and more comfortable with that left guard position, either moves into the role. If Hennessy is good, but like he's okay, but not good.
right,
He's not a huge liability, but he's not like he's not really standing out as a good offensive lineman. Then I can see maybe a swap there. Now, if Hennessy comes out and balls out and is mauling people and pushing people around, then Bergeron might just have to wait a little bit longer.
and that's fine.
Uh,
Like
yeah,
Bergeron, I think is your left guard of the future, and that future might start next year when they have to make a choice whether they re-sign Hennessy or not. You know,
yep,
um, so that wouldn't be a totally bad thing. From all accounts, all reports, Bijan Robinson is a headache when it comes to the end zone, like red zone area, from the low red zone drills. Him and Janu Smith sounds like they're both already making their uh, presence felt, like especially with Kyle Pitts still working his way back. They've hoped to have, they say he should be ready to go by training camp, was what we've heard so far. So
mhm,
that's giving, which is good because it's giving Janu Smith a chance to build some repertoire with Ritter, and I think because I think that's something that's going to be needed. Um, but it sounds like both of those guys are already like paying dividends in the red zone, so which is good to hear.
yep. It's I'm hearing some encouraging. We saw a little bit of it at the Benz, but to continue hearing uh, you know uh, hearing good news, hearing good things about Johnny Smith
Yep.
is absolutely encouraging, and I'm just uh, looking forward to this more and more. And I cannot wait till training camp. Cannot wait till preseason. It just feels like it's going to be forever until it gets here. So,
Yeah, yeah. This dead period is going to be a long, drawn out, tough one.
yep,
All right. Well, like I said, I think that's going to wrap it up for us. We appreciate y'all joining us, or just not joining us per se, but watching us. Drop your comment down below what you're most excited about, or if you even knew who boring Borders was before you found out he was suspended for 2 games. So,
Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell.
All that good stuff.
So you catch everything that we do, whether it's a live stream or a recorded video like this one here.
Right. And we'll be back on Tuesday, possibly with another surprise guest, depending on how things go. Yeah, who knows, right? And so, yeah, just keep your eye on the channel. As always, Falcons fans. Oh, I was about to do the rise up. We didn't even give out our hand.
I know. I was
how
like,
you
what
gonna
are
let
you
me do
doing?
that? I was getting ahead of myself.
Man, you were
rolling.
I was just trying to stay off the train tracks of the rolling train that was
right.
you ending the show.
As always, Falcons fans, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128, GRIMM1128. Jonathan.
At Jonathan M. Holder. Come by, say hi.
That's right. And as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
Rise up.